Welcome back to Lo-Fi and Theorize, where we consider all aspects of Five Nights at Freddy's, especially more controversial or unusual ones. One thing I find incredibly important when theorizing is character motivation. What drives a character in a story to choose the actions that they do? In such a lore-heavy series, this is more important than ever. For example, what was F10 trying to accomplish exactly? Because we spend almost the entire game of Secret of the Mimic not knowing that we just need to go to one specific room to get the schematics that F10 wants. But instead we end up going through the countless different areas throughout the game that we visit, risking life and limb to succeed. It seems like such a pointless bunch of misery to slog through. And when we get down to R&D, F10 ends up scolding us anyway when we ignore their instructions. If the actual goal all this time was to recreate M2, why didn't they just tell us to do that right away? And it just keeps getting weirder the further we go into the end of the story. When Arnold successfully defeats F10 in R&D, draining its power, and F10 finally talks to Arnold using Fiona's voice instead of Dispatch's voice, F10 acts as if everything is good and that it's so nice to meet Arnold. It's almost like this was the plan all along? But that's crazy, right? It doesn't make any sense. So today I just want to go over what F10 was actually trying to do, and their motive for doing so. I also want to share my thoughts on what the glitched permission actually is, so without wasting any more time, let's just dive right in. Alright, so when Arnold is going through Murray's Manor after his encounter with Jackie, the Dispatch voice statics out, and it is likely that this is when F10 begins to trick Arnold, pretending to be Dispatch. We know with a good amount of certainty that somewhere along the way F10 does trick Arnold, because in the ending where we hand over the data diver, we leave the building only to find that as we're driving away, the actual Fazbear Dispatch hasn't been able to contact us for hours, meaning that we gave our data diver to F10, not the actual Fazbear Dispatch, and we were tricked this entire time. Additionally, when we make it to R&D, we discover that after draining power, Dispatch's voice slowly reverts to Fiona's voice, showing us this was M1/F10 all along. So that's essentially how we know that F10 was actually Dispatch most of the game. It's very similar to how the Mimic uses Gregory's voice in Ruin, tricking Cassie into coming down and freeing it. I also find it worthwhile to mention that F10 also offers a different explanation for the Mimic's actions than the actual Fazbear Dispatch does. The Fazbear Dispatch explains the Mimic as,
"Unfortunately, it seems that one of his most creative inventions may have encountered some homicidal glitches in its programming. Now, these things happen, and I'm sure it's nothing to worry about, but you should probably worry about it. He was working on an endoskeleton that can adapt to any costume or character, large or small, with the ability to take on the persona of the character it occupies. With the addition of the aforementioned homicidal tendencies, of course. We'll be working on some ideas on how to neutralize this rogue endoskeleton, but in the meantime, just try to be quiet, careful, and focused on the task at hand. We think that endoskeleton has a lot of potential, and that's why we want you to retrieve Murray's original schematic for it. Get that schematic, and with some luck, you can deactivate that endoskeleton, and collect it for us as well."
when F10 mimics Dispatch, F10 begins with more precise details of the Mimic, telling us the Mimic Endo's reason for its violent behavior, even filling us in on its background story.
From what we can tell, it was designed to keep Murray's son entertained while Murray worked. It would mimic the actions of those around it. At some point, the endoskeleton was exposed to some sort of violence, the details of which are a little fuzzy. This mimic endoskeleton then copied that violent behavior.
This speech is consistent with the email that F10 sends to Edwin as well later in the game, where F10 begs him to reconsider and finish the program, sharing that F10 doesn't actually know what M2 was exposed to, just that it was some kind of violent behavior. Specifically, F10's message to Edwin says, "Somehow it has been damaged and is malfunctioning. M2 can no longer be controlled. It will no longer listen. It mimics rage." This message shows that F10 wasn't aware that Edwin was the one that actually damaged the Mimic Endo. And that's essentially what the F10 dispatch is saying here. That the details are fuzzy, they don't know specifically what happened. So to kind of summarize the difference here between the Fazbear dispatch and the F10 dispatch, Fazbear wants the schematics. They'd be happy if we could retrieve the endoskeleton as well. So Fazbear's after the technology, whereas F10 tells us,
"So it seems that maybe distraction and avoidance are your best tools, as a direct confrontation will likely result in the loss of some limbs. The previous technicians considered it an honor to lose limbs in the service of their company, and I'm sure they would tell you that themselves if they hadn't died from blood loss."
So F10 here is actually telling us to try and avoid the Endo instead of trying to retrieve it. Also upping the stakes so we know not to mess around with this robot, getting graphically specific about how previous technicians have died of blood loss and losing limbs. F10 does an excellent mimicking of Dispatch's hilariously apathetic banter, but I wanted to mention the differences there because it's important to understand what F10 is doing versus what Dispatch was originally wanting Arnold to do. While Fazbear's Dispatch wants us to not only get the schematics for the Endo, but also retrieve the Endo if possible, F10 makes no mention of securing the Endo for Fazbear, rather steering us away from the Mimic and telling us to avoid any contact with it at all. Because as we'll find out, F10 wants us to fix this Endo. M2 is very important to F10. But if none of that made sense, I'm just saying that F10 wants us to complete our tasks without confronting M2, because she is concerned about M2's well-being. She sees M2 as her child and believes that M2 can be fixed. She doesn't want Fazbear to retrieve the Mimic Endo, so she makes the idea of confronting this Endo even more horrific sounding than Fazbear's Dispatch does. As interesting as this might be though, it doesn't answer why we have to go through such great lengths to ultimately retrieve the Mimic. Why not just tell Arnold what's going on here? And the reason for this is that F10 is testing us, testing our character, finding out if we're worthy. That's right, F10 wants to see where our loyalty lies. Multiple technicians have been here before, but all have failed. F10 has to test us this deeply because her ultimate goal is bringing back her child, which also means trusting someone else's hands with the glitched permission. I suppose the human equivalent of this would essentially be like a very concerned parent that wants to be sure the people they're entrusting their children with are going to take good care of them. This goal of bringing her child back is something that we see F10 mention multiple times throughout the story. She's begging Edwin to try again, that they can still be a family. In her message to Edwin as Arnold is coming with the schematics, she's still asking him to fix their son, to fix M2, to fix what is broken. And that's ultimately what Arnold does in the secret ending with the Mimic being fixed by Arnold. It's important to note, however, that Arnold is unable to do this without the glitched permission. A permission that F10 only grants to him after we've done everything she's asked. The sun in Moon.EXE straight up tells us, "You have found my presence, you have completed my tasks. Now you will get your reward. Use this to bring him back. It's all in your hands now." It is here that we are finally given the glitched permission. As far as F10 is concerned, this is the true ending. This is F10's true goal. This is what the secret of the Mimic game was all about. It's a test that F10 has created, waiting to find somebody who she can trust to bring her son back to her. On a quick side note, in my last video I talk about how I think that the princess in Princess Quest is actually Fiona, and if that is the case, I further explain that I think Edwin is the arcade conspiracy guy who plays Princess Quest before Gregory. The reason I bring this up in this video is because the princess seems to be testing Edwin as well, as one of his messages says, "The glitches, glitch them all at the same time, then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy." If the princess is some form of Fiona in F10, the fact that she's testing Edwin to me lines up nicely with how she's been testing these Fazbear employees in Secret of the Mimic to see if they're worthy. While the motive in Princess Quest is to destroy Glitchtrap and is therefore different from F10's goal in Secret of the Mimic, I still find the idea of testing characters to see if they're worthy as something that we should think about more seriously, especially if this Fiona AI hybrid is in fact the princess. And that's all I want to say about that for now. So back to Secret of the Mimic. When we defy Dispatch and begin our journey towards R&D and ultimately Edwin's house, even still, F10 is testing us, asking Arnold things like,
"Don't you want a bonus? Or 2 bonuses? You can have a day off."
F10 knows how broke Fazbear employees are, and she wants to see that his commitment is deeper than simple paychecks. For me, this explains why Steel Wool included a note from a past employee that just wants their Christmas bonus and is willing to do anything to get it. This wasn't just a funny, dark humor inclusion just for the heck of it. This employee wasn't worthy in F10's mind. They were too eagerly pursuing monetary things. She even tells Edwin in a message that the company doesn't matter anymore, strengthening this whole idea that none of that is important. So anything relating to saving the company or profit is worthless to F10. The only thing that matters is their family. So F10 can't simply tell Arnold about what's truly going on when he first arrives at the manor. She has to know without a doubt that he's the one that can save her family and isn't just in this for himself. And as we can see by the previous employee bodies scattered throughout the manor, this has not been as easy as F10 had hoped. F10 wants to know that Arnold is willing to risk it all to gather the presents that have been scattered throughout the manor, that he's committed. This is why F10 asks him seemingly random questions when he makes it down to R&D. But having this new context with us, everything makes a little more sense to me. The entire Dispatch mimicking act is all part of F10's evaluation of Arnold. So when you hear lines such as,
"Arnold, why? Why would you come down here? You are clever, but you need to stop messing with things you don't understand."
F10 isn't actually wanting an answer to this why. Rather, she's trying to poke into what it is that Arnold is here for. F10 is pressing Arnold to see what he'll do now.
You should have given me what I wanted and gone home.
This last line literally would make no sense, since we know that F10 needs someone to physically fix the mimic. F10 is currently a machine and is therefore unable to do this herself, so this would be completely contradictory to F10's actual goal. But the reason for these threatening statements is to see how far Arnold is willing to go, what he's willing to do for this family. She even asks him who he is deep down inside. And while in context she's talking about what suit the mimic will stuff him into, the question still always felt slightly out of place to me, like there was something I was missing. But now it actually makes sense as to F10's true motive, learning who Arnold truly is. Is he going to complete her task, or will she have to wait for Fazbear to send another? Like, let's think about Arnold for a second. Why would Arnold come down here? He's very fearful throughout the entire game. When F10 tells Arnold to stop messing with things that you don't understand, that's such an interesting sentence to me, and it just makes me want to ask the question, what if Arnold actually does understand some of what's going on? After some of the audio logs he's heard and the things that he's seen, why would he continue going at this point if he didn't have a driving motive? It's incredibly counterproductive for his safety and well-being to do this, especially if he had the chance to drop the data diver off and leave the building. Because if we go with the idea that Arnold has been offered this opportunity by F10 to still give the data diver back to dispatch, the fact that he doesn't do this might even mean that he's learned a great deal about what's going on at Murray's Manor, and this is a deciding factor of whether he will follow through or not. At this point, Arnold doesn't know that F10 is dispatched. He doesn't say a lot, but it almost seems like he wants to do this. This is what sets him apart from the others. Nobody else even made it this far. How I see it, if he's actually already played most of Moon.EXE, he knows more than we give him credit for. But if you're confused why F10 would continue to hound him as he brings the data diver towards its destination, it's because this is the final test, one last evaluation to put him through, one last evaluation of his character before meeting F10. After all, if he doesn't continue through here, there's not a lot he could do with the data diver, and he likely won't escape this basement area anyway, so it's a safe bet for F10 that her child's future is safe either way at this point. The elevator's broken, and she doesn't have to open the doors for him. And we know in the bad ending, if he tries to leave, the mimic will catch him. But in both of the other endings, Arnold is invited to finally meet her face to face. The happiness in her voice also gives her true motive away once Arnold succeeds, showing that she's pleased with Arnold. This is the outcome she hoped for. Arnold is the chosen one. Okay, maybe that's stretching it a little bit, but she's able to confide in him. He's proved his worth, and she knows that he can bring this to fruition. I do want to bring up here that F10 thinks that Edwin is still at the manor, but the reason I'm still saying what I'm saying about her trust in Arnold is that finding someone like this, who you know is reliable, means that if something did go wrong during this last part of the journey, Arnold is her backup. He has done what was asked of him. If you're wondering why he's still genuinely shocked when he meets F10, it's because he didn't know dispatch was F10. He just knows what he needs to do and pushes forward to do it. Most anyone would still be shocked when confronting the computer, but after F10 explains herself, there are no further comments from Arnold about this. He accepts everything that she tells him and sets out to do what she asks. And I believe this is because he's able to put the rest of what's going on together in his mind, because he's played Moon.EXE before coming down here. So by the time he arrives at Murray's actual house, he's only going to need one, maybe two gifts at the most to complete Moon.EXE in its entirety. This final confrontation with F10's dispatch completed, Arnold is on his way. Arnold going through the manor, collecting the various gifts we find throughout the game, and putting them into the inventory tube system then, shows his investment in this Moon.EXE game. These presents were carefully placed in specific places all over the manor, both to guide Arnold to significant places of interest, such as David's hideaway area, and additionally just to clue Arnold in on what's going on, so that when he plays the Moon.EXE game, he has a better understanding of what happened. He finds David's playroom, posters, toys, he encounters the lovely Moon Man in the basement to retrieve David's ball, he comes face to face with the White Tiger, he sees the various Endo experiments, he would even stumble across one of the first recordings of F10 reaching out to Edwin. He gets a great deal of background on the Murray family as well. It's not impossible for Arnold to figure out what's going on here. And if he completes the Moon.EXE game, he not only has an understanding of what he's supposed to do, but he's able to confidently make his decision. This is why F10 tells him,
You have made your choice.
he has made his choice. This is why F10 still puts him through more tests to see whether this choice is genuine. She's essentially trusting her child to him. But we run into a problem here, don't we? See, we're unable to get the glitched permission on our first playthrough. We're unable to find all 25 presents until we pick one of the other two endings. So this glitched permission ending can't be canon, right? Well, I disagree. Just like how various endings in other FNAF games can merge together in a sense and give us a richer understanding of lore pieces we wouldn't have known without those endings existing, I believe the same thing is going on here. So to give an example, it seems likely that the Princess Quest ending in Security Breach is canon, and yet we also see the blob from the Burn Trap ending appearing in FNAF Ruin. So just because Gregory may not have gone all the way down through the Pizzaplex necessarily to fight Burn Trap, we still know that some of these characters exist after the canon ending. In the same way, just because the Tiger plush only shows up after we complete the game once, this doesn't mean Arnold didn't actually receive the Tiger plush. After all, he has to head back to the main office in all three endings, which is the very spot where the plush is now waiting for him. The fact that we have to start a new game is simply common video game mechanics when you unlock a special ending, not necessarily a lore plot hole. But let's think about this. If F10 is stuck in a machine, she wouldn't be able to leave any of these presents around the manor herself. It's not like one last present makes a difference as far as that is concerned. Clearly something else is at play with these gifts. Are they even real? Are they supernatural? Like, none of these presents should be here, going by this logic. So what I'm saying here is that in the same way these gifts had to have been put here, the Tiger gift could definitely have been left for Arnold in the same way. And I'll go over how I think this would all work in a little bit here. I do understand the objection to thinking this way, because that is a valid point that we're only able to get the secret ending after playing through the game. And so I'm not taking that lightly. But regardless, collecting all the gifts is quite important. And that's where we need to discuss these gifts before we continue. See, I think these gifts contain Remnant from David's life. I have a lot written about how Remnant works, but I actually don't want to include all that in this video because Remnant is a huge topic in and of itself, and for the game's timeline we have very little to go off of as far as it is concerned and how it works. So I'd essentially just be regurgitating the books, which I'm more than happy to do, so if you do want a video about that specifically, please let me know in the comments and I'd love to make it. But just to summarize the important points that I do think are worth mentioning, I do think Remnant in the game timeline might work similarly to how it does in the books. What F10 seems to be doing here is quite similar to how in the Fazbear Fright story The Real Jake, a dying boy's father believes that if you were to infuse an object with enough love and intention, that it would have life. And by the end of the story, we see that Jake does go on to possess the object in question. In the same way, knowing that David was very bonded to this endoskeleton might explain part of how he would go on to possess it. But what makes me want to be more cautious when assuming this is the possibility that this David mimic is a combination of both the endoskeleton and mimic program Edwin made, as well as the glitch permission F10 presumably makes. You need all of these things to recreate this child. And the glitched permission is what seems to bring David back into the Endo. Maybe more specifically, it's the combination of Edwin's creation and F10's creation together. The Endo and mimic code representing Edwin, and the glitched permission representing Fiona/F10. It's essentially a supernatural birthing process. It's the merging of these things that creates this life. You can gather the gifts and you can have a mimicking Endo, but without the combination of both of these creations, no life is achieved. When together, however, a rebirth, if you will, takes place. Just like how Edwin and Fiona had a child in the real world, they've now recreated their child supernaturally. All that to say that I do believe the implication of these presents in Secret of the Mimic is that gathering these gifts that are all tied to the Murray family and their memories is part of what creates this strange life that seems to become David at the end. The process of the gifts being sent directly through this inventory tube system seems to be showing us that the inventory tube system is directly tied to F10, since F10 is directly tied to Moon.EXE and the glitch permission, which means that this tube system is also tied to Remnant, assuming that this is how Remnant works to an extent in the games. So what F10 creates with these Remnant memory-filled objects is the glitched permission. So these gifts Arnold gathers play a significant role in this creation process. As I see it, the reason we're being shown these memories in Moon.EXE is that objects hold memories in FNAF, like quite literally. We've been collecting memory plushies in Help Wanted 2, Cassie finds memories of her dad in the AR world, and one last mention that the FNAF books give us is a broader understanding of how memories tie into Remnant. Remnant is the mixing of the tangible with the intangible, of memory with the present. So the books are confirming for us that Remnant and memories are closely connected, and since Moon.EXE is literally showing us memories from physical objects that we've gathered in the real world, this lines up very neatly to me for how Remnant might work in the FNAF game lore. One more thing about Moon.exe that I think we need to bring up is that not all of these memories are good memories. There's actually some pretty bad ones. And I think that's because this isn't simply a possession, but a rebirth of David in a sense. It's the full experience, his full life, memories his parents have, etc. It's not just the good parts. It's a supernatural / advanced AI type of DNA passed to this David mimic. Edwin, Fiona, and David. Different aspects of all of them. Everything that was experienced before. There's so much more to discuss here about Moon.exe, like we could go into the Sun-Moon rebirth, the waking up in Murray's manor, the symbolism of the other characters, Jackie, what all of it means. But for this video, I just want to get back to Arnold. So Moon.exe gives us background information for every piece that we send into the inventory tube system. So Arnold's learning more about this family as he goes through the manor. Every time he puts a present item into the system, more information is revealed to him, which ultimately will give him the information he needs to decide what he's going to do. And in the secret ending, we see exactly what he decides to do. Again, it's perfectly possible that the other endings are the one that actually plays out, but since we don't have that confirmation yet, I currently think some aspect of this ending does happen. And the fact that Arnold heads down to R&D at all instead of leaving the data diver behind, to me implies that he has a goal in mind, that him and F10 are actually like-minded in what they want to accomplish. F10 just wants to confirm that this is true for Arnold as well. And ending the Moon.exe game with the transferal of the glitched permission to Arnold's data diver seems to signify that F10 has indeed found Arnold to be like-minded. He's entrusted with her child's care. But how did F10 know this would work? And I think the answer is quite simple. We learn in the game that F10 told Edwin that M2 started out as a copy of the M1 program, but F10 realized that M2 was different than this program, that it was something more. So when M2 is with Edwin and starts talking like David, the sad reality was that this was David talking to his dad, and F10 knows it. But Edwin doesn't know this, and so he's absolutely enraged when he comes across this David mimicking Endo. This also explains why F10 is so adamant that Edwin tries again, because F10 knows that it will work. It's the reason that we later hear F10 say,
"I miss you, but I miss my child more. I want him back."
Saying that you want him back means that you had him before. It means that this has already happened once. But it's time to switch topics again, because I promised earlier that I would kind of go over how I imagined this ending playing out in a similar way to how Security Breach did. So in Security Breach, we were shown the Pizzaplex falling apart and even being set on fire in various endings, only to find in ruin that the building had actually been demolished by a wrecking crew and that an earthquake may have caused some of the Pizzaplex's damage as well. The burn trap ending and other endings may not have been the actual cause of the destruction that we see. And for this Secret of the Mimic theory, I would argue that this game's endings play out in a similar way. After meeting F10 and heading to Murray's house, Arnold sees that Edwin is nowhere to be found. But since Arnold is already here, he can still grab the last present he needs and use the nearby computer, where he completes Moon.exe, receives the glitched permission from F10, proceeds to open the rest of the doors with the permission now in his data diver, collect the bedtime story tapes, and lastly enter David's room where he can fix the mimic. As for collecting the tiger plush, he either grabs it on the way to R&D, or after collecting the 24th gift and not seeing Edwin in the house, he leaves the house, heads back to the main office to return the data diver to dispatch, but he finds the last present there, boots up Moon.exe, receives the glitched permission, and then makes his way back to David's room. There are plenty of other interpretations as to what's going on here though. F10 could just be a master manipulator pulling Arnold along to get what she wants, hence the apathy towards the other employees dying. F10 does warn Edwin in a message that no one is safe with M2 in this violent state, asking him to finish the program, so that seems to be like a counter to this apathetic idea, but maybe that's just a pull at his emotions to make him do what she wants, rather than a genuine attempt to keep him safe. It's also possible that I'm completely wrong, and there's no supernatural element to the David mimic, and that F10 mimicking Fiona wants her own robotic family back. It's not anything supernatural, it's just literally an AI that now has developed feelings and wants a family. It could be that simple. But what do you think? Because I could be completely wrong here. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for listening.